Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is KIAN JABOUR and as usual, I am your host this evening on this beautiful Friday night. My guest, as everyone knows, is none other than the famous Timothy Jonas.
Thanks for having me, Kian. I envy you your energy.
Yeah.
I try to keep up with you.
Don't envy it. It's all a show. I am extremely tired like everyone else. It's been a long week, but nonetheless, we are here and we're ready to go. So
Good.
I'm going to try and figure this out for a second. Good. Okay. I am going to try and we're going to have a little topic. We're going to try and have a conversation today about some very interesting political dynamics here in Guyana. It's going to be a much more broad topic, and I'd really like your opinion on some ideas that some political analysts have said is necessary. It's something that's been tried in the past in Guyana. There have been issues. We're going to talk about all that. But the topic today is going to be the necessity of independent third party here in Guyana. All right. We're going to try and get into a little bit of as much detail as possible on what it adds or takes away from the political landscape here in Guyana. So the first question I'd like to ask you, and it's going to be a very general, simple question, answer it in any way you think possible. Do you think it is beneficial for a third party, an independent third party outside of the PPP and PNC to exist in Guyana, and briefly why?
It's interesting you raise that now, because just this week, a friend of mine relayed the opinion of a colleague that politics in Guyana is about PNC PPP and nobody else has a chance and nobody else is relevant. Now, interestingly enough, at the current state of playing Guyana, I agree with the first part. Nobody else is going to get into government. The fact is 90% of Guyanese will vote how they're voting. But that's not what it's about. And I'm glad you raised it because I want to explore and discuss why it is that a third party is absolutely critical if we are going to fix the political landscape in Guyana. Here's the thing. Every Guyanese has had this experience, every Guyanese of voting age, that you go to vote and your side wins or your side loses, because we've had that in the last 10 years. We've had that dynamic. So whether you're a PPP supporter or an APNU supporter, you go to vote, and in 2015, the PPP supporters were disconsolate, and in 2020, the APNU supporters were horrified. Why the extreme view? Why the vitriolic response to an election result? Why isn't it that, as most other places in the first world, if your party loses, you shrug and you move on with life? The reason is that as long as there are only two parties holding seats in parliament, then the party who wins the government also wins parliament. Now, why is that important? It's important because if I'm in government and I can also pass laws, I pass laws to give myself more power, give myself more money, give myself more control to perpetuate myself in office. And that's even more important now when Guyana is flush with all the free money that we are getting from oil and gas. So it's critically important to understand why a two-party race results in all or nothing. That if you win a two-party race, you get both control of government and parliament, and if you lose, you have control of neither. People right now are looking at APNU and they're saying APNU's quarreling about nothing, APNU's not representing the opposition properly, APNU's not doing its job. Here's the thing, APNU has no power now. There's nothing that APNU can do right now because APNU has 32 seats in parliament. So we have a budget debate going on, and it may be a good budget, it may be a bad budget. I know you want to talk about that later. It doesn't matter. Because when Ashley Singh finishes presenting his budget, and when the APNU people finish heckling and quarreling and throwing remarks, and the PPP folk finish heckling and quarreling back and throwing back remarks, 33 people are going to approve that budget in Parliament. And what can APNU do about it? Nothing. So here's why a third party is the only chance of changing that. You see, it's no different when Winston Jordan was presenting the budget between 2015 and 2020. 33 people on the APNU side would vote to support the budget. So however much quarreling and boisterous and ugly behavior from the opposition side, they have no power if there are only 32 of them. The 33rd seat in Parliament is all important. And this is what I want to get through to anybody who will listen. That 33rd seat, if it is controlled by government, then we have an elected dictatorship and the opposition can do nothing. They are not in any of the decision-making processes. If a third party has that 33rd seat, if a third party has that 33rd seat in Parliament, suddenly the opposition control Parliament. Now, when I started the concept with some serious intellectuals assisting, we started out with people who are still there and still in support, with the intellectual giants like Henry Jeffrey, Ralph Ramkaran. These are people who have the experience and understand the political system, the Westminster system, and have explored systems around the world to see if any peculiarities in Guyana can fix the problem or if we can borrow from somewhere else. And we started with the idea of constitutional reform because that's the first go-to, that's the first idea that you have, that man, if something's wrong, you go back to basics, you go back to that foundation, which is the Constitution, and you try to fix it. After 4 years, I realized it's not going to happen. Both sides talk about constitutional reform as a sop to placate the other side, but it's not meaningful. The last time we had constitutional reform was back in 2001 when APNU supporters were breaking the peace in Georgetown, and the PPP had no choice but to come to the table. And even then, the constitutional reform that resulted was not sufficient to make any meaningful change. It got lost in the noise. But it has occurred to me, and I have been trying to persuade people, and I think the solution lies not in constitutional reform, as important as that is, and hopefully we will get there, but in control of that 33rd seat. Because the fact is that if we have an independent parliament, a parliament independent of the government, with an independent parliament, we can pass laws to decentralize the power of government. You see, when government controls parliament, they centralize that power. Every contract awarded, every road built, every employee in the public service, every appointment to any senior commission or senior board held by the government, every appointment to any media host, Chronicle or NCN or any of them, is done by the government because of the control of parliament. But if the opposition controlled parliament, they could begin to decentralize that power and to include the opposition in those decision-making processes, in those rooms where the decisions are made, so that there is scrutiny. It is the 33rd seat that we have to be concerned about. And the AFC got the 33rd seat and did nothing with it. Fine. But I am satisfied that if opposition controls the 33rd seat in parliament, a lot of Guyana's problems can be solved. And more than that, finally, we will be able to see real results. And people, I think, the average voter, when he begins to see those results, when she begins to see those results, will at that stage recognize that we can now have the luxury to vote on merit. But that can't be done with only two parties, because if there are only two parties, the party that wins also takes parliament. That's simple maths. You can only have an opposition-controlled parliament if there is a third party.
All right. Now, let me ask a question here. And I think this is obviously always the burning question when it comes to a third party having an option in Guyana or becoming an option in Guyana. It has been done once. All right?
It's been done more than once.
No, I mean creating the minority.
Okay.
Right? The minority has been created once in 2011. All right, and that was with AFC. AFC created one seat minority again, if I'm not mistaken, under the Ramatar government. The PPP decided that they were not going to continue ruling under those circumstances, and they prorogued parliament, and we went to election. Now, after all of that occurred, the AFC joined the APNU for the 2015 election. Now, obviously, that left a very bitter taste in people's mouths. Now, I'd like you to tell me what the Guyanese should have learned and what should be expected moving forward. I want to know, in reality, what people should view third parties at moving forward if they've already been burned by the AFC in their minds.
You know, Kian, I'm going to call a name. This is a story you probably don't know, but I'm going to tell you something that happened when I think it was 2014, the announcement was made that the AFC, who had done nothing with the third seat that they held, were going to collate with APNU for the 2015 elections. Now, it was clear that the AFC were concerned only with getting into government. Mm-hmm. They weren't thinking about what they could do with the control of parliament, which is a tragedy, because there were lawyers like Ramjatan and Trotman in the AFC, and if they sat down for a minute and thought about it, they would realize that the decentralization of power from government would lead to equity and a wider cross-section of Guyanese having access to decision-making and having access to the increasing resources of the country. They didn't do anything like that. It was a tragedy. Mm-hmm. But in 2014, I was doing an arbitration at Bank of Guyana, and the lawyer on the other side is somebody that I professionally have a great deal of respect for, Nigel Hughes. Bright, charismatic, charming man who should be running APNU right now.
Okay.
Because he was a threat to Granger, he was sidelined. Mm-hmm. But when I heard that AFC had decided to form this coalition with APNU, he was chairman of AFC at the time, and I stood up on Avenue of the Republic outside Bank of Guyana with him, and I quarreled about it. Because I had been an AFC supporter, still was. I voted for coalition and AFC in 2015. But I said to him at the time, the AFC will not be able to withstand the excesses and the extremes of the APNU personnel. They cannot draw their line in the sand and represent the moderates who support them. It's the moderate electorate who supported the AFC at the time. They will not be able to hold to that. They will be subsumed. And that is what happened. Listen, this is straight maths. This is nothing else. If you are doing any good for Guyana, and if you believe you can do good for Guyana in terms of the political landscape, it must be, first of all, to recognize that as a matter of maths, if Parliament is to be independent of government so that we can start decentralizing power, decentralizing the money, decentralizing decision-making so that the opposition can participate,
right,
there has to be a third party. That's maths. 32 plus 32 plus 1. If you only got two parties in there, it must be 33 and 32. And the party with 33 control everything. It's a dictatorship. So you must have that third party. And if you have that third party and you are willing to represent for that third party, chances are you're not going to be in government. Yeah. In fact, you're certainly not going to be in government.
Okay.
And that needs to be the recognition. This is not done to get into government. This is done for the 33rd seat, because the intention is for the good of Guyana to create an independent parliament and a system where, because of that independent parliament, the opposition in parliament can say to the government, we are passing this law that government may not own a media house. Mm-hmm. Or we are passing this law that if government owns any media house, the board on that media house must have 2 opposition members, 1 third party member, and 2 government members, so that the people it employs will be professionals who can run the place properly. the news that it disseminates will be news that reflects the views of government and opposition. Suddenly, the opposition will have a say in what Chronicle publishes. All of that can be done if opposition control the third to third seat, if a third party controls the third to third seat.
Now, I can get a little bit more technical for you here, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to be devil's advocate, and I'm going to talk as the average man that may not understand completely, or even, or more importantly, trust anyone to be able to sit in the middle of the PPP and PNC. Now, as any government party, because AP and UAFC did it, and now the PPP are doing it, they state if somebody goes in the middle there, or you vote for anybody else, or we create a minority government, then they are going to stop progress. I'd like your comment on that.
Wow. I haven't heard that particular argument. I've heard that third parties are irrelevant. But if somebody says to me, after 60 years of Guyana, after 60 years of independence, where up to 5 years ago we were second poorest to Haiti, that I'm stopping progress, I don't think that's worth an answer, Kian. We are second poorest to Haiti, except for oil money. Mm-hmm. The oil has saved us, no thanks to us or our efforts or our skill or our ingenuity or our ability to develop the country. Foreigners came, took oil out, and we get free money. We are flush with funds. Mm-hmm. Except for that, we would still be second poorest to Haiti. And you're telling me I'm stopping progress by a third party? Well, where's the progress?
Well, there you go. So that's what the interesting argument is at the moment, though. It's the fact that, you know, a lot of people have seen this $1 trillion budget that just came out. I'm going to ask Robbie to just throw it up on the screen, please. This is a scale of the budget that has happened throughout. Let me help you guys out. The budget that has happened throughout the last since PPP got into power. Let's not zoom in. Sorry, guys. Oh, there it is. Yeah, since PPP got into power, there is, in the billions, it was 300, and then now it's at 1 trillion. The last budget there is 781.9 billion. All right. So at 781.9 is now jumped to 1 trillion. I think what's important to remember here with this budget, and this is the first one when it comes to progress, is understanding that the government did take out 3 supplementary budgets last year that went on top of that 700
and triple their borrowing power. Triple the debt ceiling.
Good.
So they can borrow. They're flush with funds.
So they're flush with funds.
So much money that they can do almost anything they want.
But just to do,
which is a good thing. But we need to discuss how money is to be spent.
Right. Just to do a little quick math for you here. For the 3 budgets that they have, the 3 supplementary budgets that they had passed after they passed the 2023 budget, it equaled just under $1 trillion. All right, it equaled to about 900 and something billion. So the budget that they've made $1 trillion now, and they're saying, oh my gosh, look at what we've done, is only realistically about $100 billion less than last year.
First of all, let's stop. Okay. When you say, oh my gosh, look at what we've done.
Okay.
We haven't done it.
Right. Look how much of your money we're spending.
The correlation between the size of the budget and the commencement of profit from oil is exact. So as the oil money came in, the budget got bigger. What it got to do with what we have done?
Okay.
What we got to do is say, Santa Claus has blessed us.
Right.
Let us see how most wisely to spend this money. But it's not about what we have done.
Okay.
We got to windfall.
I agree. We've hit the lottery.
We hit the lottery.
Yes.
So with 750,000 people in the country, if that money is spent wisely, if it is invested properly,
equitably,
in infrastructure, in people, in our social needs, man, this country could be transformed into one of the best places to live in the world.
And more importantly, in a very, very short time.
In a very short space of time.
Not particularly 5 years.
And what is beautiful about it is that because of our poverty over the last 60 years, 90% of Guyana's geography has been untouched. It's pristine. So we can actually develop where 750,000 people are improve their standard of living so extraordinarily and yet retain the pristine nature of the rest.
Right.
We can be unique in this world.
I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that.
The thing is that power creates corruption, and absolute power creates absolute corruption. And as long as the government controls parliament, there is absolute power. And we have seen 60 years. Corruption. We have seen 60 years of what that absolute power does, except for the uncomfortable 5 years when the impotent AFC did nothing, although they held that 33rd seat. Right. But by holding the 33rd seat, at least they were able to prevent the dictatorial control of the purse strings, which Guyana is accustomed to by the government of the day. Okay. Whether it's PNC or PPP.
All right. I'm gonna bring up a few more very interesting social topics and issues in Guyana that I'd like you to give your opinion on, especially in regards and keeping with the idea of the 33rd seat and how it can benefit. So the budget just passed, and Gaisuko was allocated some more money. I'm gonna ask Robbie to bring it up. Gaisuko has been allocated another $9 billion. All right, there it is. Minister of Agriculture has revealed to the Parliamentary Committee of Supply today that the government has injected $9 billion into the Guyana Sugar Corporation to resuscitate the Rose Hall estate.
Well, this $9 billion is just the latest of many.
Well, I just going to say, I think we do need to make mention to the. I think it's in and around 10, 15, 20 billion that went in last year. But go on.
And Gaisuko hasn't turned a profit
ever
since for 20 years. But that is really not the point.
Okay.
And I want. Here's the thing. We talked about this 33rd seat, and one of the problems that we have faced as the competition between APNU and PPP became closer, so that in fact there was a change of power in Parliament, is that the perception that Gaisuko is a PPP institution, that its employees are PPP supporters, this made it irrelevant whether it was profitable or not. The PPP up to 2015 felt that they had to prop Gaisuko up, and they continue to make injections of money into Gaisuko just to prop it up. But the thing is, it's a simplification to criticize the PPP for this, because I don't think the PPP were wrong. I'll tell you why. Gaisuko's function, first of all, is an integral part of the social fabric of society in Guyana, especially in the rural areas. Yeah. But Gaisuko isn't just a place that grows sugarcane. Gaisuko maintains a drainage system. We on the coast are underwater. Right. So it's important for us that this drainage system continues. It maintains the agriculture, and as part of that, it was very involved in providing different services in the villages, medical services and that kind of thing. It created a structure. When APNU pulled the rug, that also was a simplification that helped nobody. But here's the large danger that I want to point out, where we have an elected dictatorship if it's only two parties that the government controls the 33rd seat. PPP is injecting money and losing gradually every year with Gaisuko. APNU goes in and there is no consultation, there's no discussion across the table at the other side. They pull the rug. Right. And therefore, the machinery starts to break down, because in Guyana, if you close down machinery, the rust takes over, the vegetation takes over, all the sugar factories, all the estates quickly started to turn into rust. They weren't mothballed properly, they weren't put up, they weren't decommissioned properly, so they quickly started to turn to rust. What it meant is that what could have been a smooth transition to privatization or a sale to an investor of a company that wasn't profitable but was a going concern was poorly managed by an incompetent PNC. They just pulled the rug and closed down everything. You had massive unemployment. You had ex-Gaisuko employees going to farming in the backyard just to make a subsistence living. And you had the deterioration rapidly of assets that may not have been profitable but were valuable. Okay. PPP comes back and they try to raise Lazarus from the dead. You have estates that should not, no right-thinking person should try to resuscitate this thing, but they felt they had to, and they did it. If a third party held the 33rd seat in Parliament, there would be a discussion between the government, whether it's PNC or PPP, and the opposition, whether it's PNC or PPP, as to how to manage Gaisuko, because that third party would prevent the government of the day from unilaterally and dictatorially deciding a course of action for Gaisuko. What that would mean is that there is a continuity of an economic policy. Right. You don't pull the rug and then try to prop it back up again. Think how much money Guyana has lost trying to restructure a broken Gaisuko after it was mothballed for 5 years.
Yeah.
So you've had this inconsistent economic policy, this stop-start approach to economics that is totally destructive, spending taxpayers' money uselessly. You will remember when the PPP came back into power in 2020, they stopped the Payara project for a while, which had been approved for the oil and gas, because they wanted to reread to see if the PNC had done everything right. When AFC got that 33rd seat, they stopped the Amalia Falls project because they hadn't agreed with it. We in Guyana have a situation where the government of the day with its 33 seats says, we're doing this. And then if by any stroke of luck or misfortune they lose that 33rd seat or it changes, you have a total reconstruction of an economic policy and the country suffers. We need continuity of economic policies, and that is only possible if the third party holds a 33rd seat. So the government can't mandate, we're going to build Amalia Falls. PPP is now wants to build Amalia Falls again. They want to start back that project.
Back fresh again.
PPP wants the gas to shore project to work. APNU has opposed it. PPP wanted Skeldon factory. APNU opposed it.
Right.
It was a disaster. PPP wanted the fiber optic cable from Brazil on the Ramatar. APNU opposed it. As soon as there's a change, they pull the rug and all that money gets wasted.
Yeah.
If both sides are involved in these discussions, there could be a calm and rational and continuous economic policy for the benefit of the whole country. We're not seeing that.
Right.
A 33rd seat in Parliament would mandate that you can't just say, I'm paying for Amalia Falls, here's my budget, quarrel or not, I have the 33rd seat and I approve it.
Agreed.
You then have to go politely to the third party, and the third party can say, talk to the big opposition. Let us all sit down together and do this thing and decide how we're doing it and how we're going to make it work. Yeah. And then you have a continuous economic policy.
I like it. I think that's exactly the key there. If everybody is part of the decision-making process, then all the projects will continue.
There's continuity.
Right? So it is not start, stop, money wasted, projects burned, people losing contracts. And what people need to understand, especially the business community here in this country, I mean, anybody that has a head on their shoulders when it comes to business is understanding the only thing that's really necessary for you to be successful in business is continuity, is consistency, right? At the end of the day, a businessman's job is to adapt, all right? And the more continuity, the more continuous, line of progress that we have, is the easier it is to succeed.
Because the economics becomes predictable.
Right.
So you can see the trends. You have confidence that these projects continue. Nobody's going to pull the rug because everybody's approved it.
Yeah.
And more than that, it is no longer the mandate of one party only to decide who's getting the contracts to build the road for Amalia, to put in the piping for the gas.
So now we're talking about a level playing field.
We're talking about both sides saying how these contracts are going to be awarded.
Yeah.
Procurement Commission, you must have 2 opposition, 1 third party, and 2 government on the Procurement Commission. Then let us talk about how contracts are awarded for projects that we both have agreed. Okay. All of that doesn't need constitutional reform. All of that needs the 33rd seat to be held by a third party. An
independent third party, yes. Absolutely. One that will not join PPP or APNU. Correct. You brought up an interesting topic because it's one of the topics that I'd like to speak about, and that's the Procurement Commission. All right.
Okay, tell me.
So I'm going to ask Robbie to bring up the headline for the Procurement Commission. This came out recently in the budget debates of quite a bit of money has been being spent. So the sorry, let me help our few Instagram viewers. So it reads, Procurement Commission paid over $150 million in 18 months and only produced 2 reports. All right. It goes on to read, Chairman and Commissioners of the Public Procurement Commission, the PPC, have been paid over $150 million in 18 months in salaries and other benefits, but have only managed to produce 2 investigative reports. Now, this is an interesting conversation because, first of all, the Public Procurement Commission is a constitutional body, right? They are mandated in the Constitution that they have to exist.
I'm not sure it's constitutional. I think it's statutory, but don't quote me on it. It's a statutory.
Well, let's take your benefit. Let's take your benefit. No problem. Because I don't have the.
It's not an aspect of the Constitution. It's statutory.
Good. So no problem at all. So we have a statutory body here that is. Let's start with the very, again, maybe oversimplification, but let's just start with their salaries. All right. This is probably the highest paid board in the country. All right.
Well, we don't know. And here's the thing. Here's the secrecy.
Where
the government
we don't know. I guess you're right. Yeah.
If I were to ask you, well, think about the various boards that exist that the government appoints.
Right.
Do you know how much they earn?
Well, that's even more worrying.
And the fact is, you don't know.
Okay. Well, let me rephrase. Of what we are aware of, all right? Of what we are aware of, this is the highest paid procurement.
So here's what I know.
Commission.
And
go ahead.
There can be full disclosure on this, I'm sure. There are some positions and some commissions that the government appoints its friends and its family to. Those are the good paying ones. There are other commissions, equally statutory commissions, equally important, that don't pay anything or pay very little.
Right.
And then anybody could get those.
Okay.
Now, I know you've been on a board.
Yeah, I was on GRDB.
And I could tell you in 2015, the new APNU government asked me to chair the Competition Commission, which is another board, which is another statutory commission of importance seated in Sophia. I didn't expect to get paid. It wasn't in my mind. I was just happy that, hopefully the change, hopefully the change would help Guyana, because I was still in that euphoric stage where there had been a change in government after 22 years, and I hoped the new government would be doing some good. They didn't. I was disappointed. Let me be the first to say.
Okay.
So I agreed to do it. I wasn't thinking about money. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, I got an envelope after the first month. And when I opened it, I work from memory, but I think it was $7,000 inside the envelope. So chairman of the Competition Commission gets something like $7,000 or $14,000.
Gotcha.
But some other statutory commissions, people are taking home over $1 million. Mm-hmm. Now, that only happens because the government of the day can decide that it's created this commission with its 33rd seat, and the Public Procurement Commission is created by the Public Procurement Act, and that is done with the 33 seats. Right. It creates the act, the act creates a commission, the commission is appointed, the personnel are appointed by the minister, and
through cabinet, yeah.
Well, cabinet, minister, we're all friends here.
Right.
And therefore, you appoint the people you want to get these nice positions. 33rd seat in parliament, think about it. If a third party owns the 33rd seat in parliament, first of all, the third party can mandate that unless parliament specifically provides otherwise in the act, so everybody would have to see, because it would have to be there in the act, every chairman of every commission and every board run by the government, so Chronicle Board, NISIL Board, GPL Board, GUYANA Board, all of them would get, let's say, $150,000 a month, $100,000 a month, and the other board members would get, let's say, $100 a month, $75 a month. So that if you hear that Prasad or Griffith is on a board, you know he's getting. There's no secrets. There's no friends and family preference for some boards and some commissions. If the 33rd seat is available for the third party to do that, you have already decentralized power, because you have then created a fair and equitable situation where you are doing the job, you are sitting on the commission because you're doing a service to your country, and it does not, there's no possibility created that I am creating a commission with my 33rd seat because I'm government and giving my friends these positions. Guyana full up of commissions, Guyana full up of boards of directors of government-owned entities, and all of them are appointed by this minister or that minister or the other minister. With the 33rd seat in parliament, and I want to say this 100 times until people are sick of hearing it. A third party who controls that 33rd seat can easily say, we are going to amend the act so that 2 people on this board or this commission are opposition, 1 person is third party, 2 people are government. And every single board and commission, chairman gets 100,000 or 150, the rest get 100 or 75. And you have a fair situation, and you have decision making by the opposition and the government people sitting in a room making the decision. They can hate each other, that's fine. But you know what will happen? And this is where the unique nature of Guyana and the fact that we actually get along is so wonderful. Because if you put 2 opposition people, doesn't matter if PPP or PNC are in opposition, and 2 government people in a room to make a decision, and you have a third party as the 5th, so that you can't have a tied vote, they will have a discussion, and they will reach a decision, and they will reach consensus. And after they've done the same thing over and over for a year or 2 years, there will begin to be a camaraderie and a rapport and a shared intention to do the right thing, because you can't steal because I'm watching you, and I can't steal because you're watching me. And all of Guyana is represented at that table where that decision is being made. That is when we will have one Guyana.
All right. So here's a what I am gathering from this whole scenario. The minute you get this third seat with an independent third party, what it will do is it will reduce significantly the amount of government involvement and intervention into how the country is being run.
No. Sorry to interrupt you, Ken. It won't.
Go ahead.
What it will do is it will mandate that in every single intervention the government is there,
right,
opposition is there too.
Right.
And not just there,
so
but
essentially
there with the decision-making power equal to the government.
So essentially making a level playing field, giving everybody the same opportunity, irrelevant to whether you're a government friend or not.
Irrelevant.
Right? So when I say less government involvement, I mean it will just become a process, not a I hope I'm one of the favored. I hope my name doesn't get scratched off the list because I robbed the government the wrong way. And I think that's what is the most important thing here.
This is another aspect of decentralization of government power. I'll give you an example. The RDC, the Regional Democratic Offices, and the NDCs, the Neighborhood Democratic Councils, they are supposed to be autonomous. Each time you drive up the coast, drive up the bank, or go over the river, and you are going into villages, each village is governed, or 2 villages together, by a NDC. The NDCs are all beholden to the government because the government, as part of centralizing power, has prevented them from making their own money through rates and taxes, which is the most fair system of taxation that I'm aware of. But the government has said, we're not letting you raise rates and taxes, we're not letting you levy on new houses, we're not doing new valuations, so if you want money, you got to come to us. That centralization of power has allowed the government to go in every single village and say, we're building a road here, we're cleaning a trench here, we're building a stadium here, we're putting a bridge up in Linden, and take credit for it as if they're doing something good. When all they're doing is spending the free money from Exxon, but they are breaking down the system because the NDCs should be autonomously able to finance their own infrastructural projects. And here's the rub. As long as it's central to government, then government is the only contracting party. And government can say to any contractor, you want the contract to build the bridge? I'll give it to you. But that man's blacklisted. You mustn't buy quarry material, stone from him, because he has supported the PNC. You must buy stone from this other person.
Right.
Or that person's blacklisted. You mustn't buy cement. Or do me a favor and buy cement from the man. I'm trying to help him out.
Okay.
Now, that is where corruption comes in, and it's insidious, and it is pervasive throughout Guyana. But you know what? If each of those several dozen autonomous NDCs were able financially to make their own decisions, they might be corrupting themselves. But when they award contracts, they would be doing it autonomously. It would not have central control by government. Yeah. And therefore, if I'm a contractor, I could say to government, go to hell, in the hope and the expectation that the NDC from up there in Enmore might give me a contract, or the NDC from Victoria might give me a contract. Because everybody's working independently. Because I have different options to go to. Yeah. And that decentralization of power and of control from the government will also realize a decentralization of corruption and less dependence by the so-called contractors who right now can't say a word against the government because they won't get another contract.
Let me also tell you what I think will be another symptom of that third seat in government, in parliament, and again, decentralizing that type of power. We talk about progress right now. We talk about, the PPP spending money and they building roads and how quickly the country is moving. But when, as a businessman myself, when I hear that there can be multiple, people giving out contracts, there can be multiple organizations that are pushing, progress and building and construction in their own areas, then that will only make things more efficient and move forward much quicker. Because all of a sudden, the red tape that you're dealing with central government, again, you may not have to deal with on the side of the RDCs and NDCs. Yes, you want to make sure, again, that there's as little corruption as possible. But if multiple people are all working in the same direction, then all of a sudden, more people are getting contracts. Things are being built faster, roads are being fixed quicker, drains are being cleaned better, and what you found is progress is much more efficient and effective. You're moving forward much, much quicker.
But KIAN, that's the single defining point of capitalist success.
Right.
That if everybody is a man in his own castle and can make his own business decisions and can try his luck, you have hundreds of areas of economic endeavor.
Hundreds of little engines moving all at the same time, pushing forward. One. Yeah, instead of the one. Absolutely.
Socialism is based on centralization of power. Yeah. And it's one wheel turning.
Yep.
If you have several organizations, each of them financially autonomous, each of them contracting, you will have 10 times the rate of progress because the money will be circulating 10 times as fast. You won't have one stadium going up, you'll have 10.
And what I always, my slogan to the business community that, is so accustomed to that little pie that exists and trying to get their crumbs from it, is understanding that if they think they're successful now, imagine if there were 10 other people giving out contracts that you don't have to, and I mean this in the least nice way possible, that you don't have to kiss their ass to get, because it's a level playing field and you can go and put in your contract, your bid, and you can win that contract strictly based on the fact that you are a capable company. Then imagine how much more successful you're going to be. But then you got all of these loud ones out here that collecting, the little scraps and trying to hold on to the little money because they know that they're a waste of time. And I'm going to be a little bit vicious here because they're the ones that are speaking the loudest and claiming how great things are. But at the end of the day, things can be moved 10 times forward if everybody were to just understand that decentralizing this power and giving everyone an opportunity and a level playing field will make everybody more successful.
And it can be done with the 33rd seat in Parliament.
With the 33rd seat in Parliament.
So when people say that a third party is useless, a third party is hopeless, you can never win.
Yeah.
You have to remember that the objective was already achieved by AFC. They just didn't know what to do with it.
Right. I learned from the mistakes.
The 33rd seat allows our political landscape to change so that we can insist as a majority opposition in Parliament, arm in arm with whoever's the large opposition party, whether it's PPP or PNC. We can insist that Parliament is independent and the opposition has a say in every single area of endeavor.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to think what will happen. The government spent a ton of money on the Amala Falls. The new government, when AFC came in, they pulled the rug. All that money went to waste. The government now is back. The PPP government now is back and wants to start over and spend more taxpayers' money on the Amalia Falls. What happens in 2025 if there's a change of government?
Right.
we waste all that money all over again.
Yeah.
What happens if there's a change of government with the Gas to Shore project? We waste all that money all over again. Why can't we understand that there needs to be this continuity and shared view, shared vision for Guyana's economic development that brings both sides in, or else it must fail?
Yeah, shared decision making. I want to, and I'm going to say this at the camera, because I think everybody needs to understand this in this country, especially those that are reaping the benefits right now. Because, you know, for all those that are not, you don't need to say much for them to understand that this country is not progressing as quickly as it should. There are lots of people out there that are not doing. We're actually going to talk very quickly in a few minutes about the potential teacher strike coming up on Monday. We'll talk about that in a second, because I know you come from a family of teachers. But nonetheless, I'm going to say this, you know, to all the people out there that, you know, are eating the crumbs and thinking things are great and not really having the vision of anything larger or what could be better, but just trying to hope their bread stays buttered. At the end of the day, you want to know the truth? Politics is an ever-changing game. And that means that politics will change. That means the government will change. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but inevitably, no matter what, politics is going to change. So if you are sitting there and you're feeding from one side and you're hoping, oh my gosh, they're going to stay there forever, you're in for a rude surprise. And you've seen it already with all these other big contractors and people who used to get contracts and where that has led. But I'm trying to get people to understand and learn a little bit from the past. What you should be doing is hoping and doing everything you can for a level playing field. And if you're feeding off of the corruption, is understanding that your time is limited. All right? And I understand it's a cash grab, get as much as you can because you don't know what will happen next. But now imagine if there was a level playing field, balance in Parliament, the third seat held by somebody independent, contracts were awarded on merit. Now imagine that you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not 5 or 10 years from now, if you're still going to be gaining, because you know everything is going to continue. You know the big projects are going to continue. You know that the contracts will still be available no matter who's in power. And that's the system that needs to be created now. All right. Moving forward, we're going to talk about the teachers' strike that seems to be coming up soon. I don't know if, Robbie, if I gave you... No, I didn't. Sorry. I didn't give him the news clip. But at the moment, the GTU, the Guyana Teachers Union, is threatening a strike action for all the teachers, public school teachers across the country on Monday because their salaries increases have not been met that they require or they have requested. I think that is obviously a very tricky line to walk because nobody can just come and request any amount of money and it be given to them. But what they've asked is for the government to come to these are public servants, so employed by the government. They've asked the government to come to the negotiation table and basically see what can be done for salary increases in order to better the lives of our teachers, essentially. I would like to start by saying factually that I've checked today, the starting salary of a teacher is 91,000 Guyana dollars, 91. All right, that is when a teacher comes out of school, heads into begins their first teaching career, their first steps in their teaching career, they're given 91,000. I'm going to start by saying that I don't know how long you expect a teacher to stay a teacher at 91,000. Whether it be for a year, whether it be for 2 or 3 years, at the end of the day, you can't live on $91,000. So you're already starting on the back foot. So if you do find teachers that really love what they're doing and have pushed forward or have had supplementary income, as you know, lessons, etc., that they have to do, you do move up on the average. Now, the current average salary for teachers in Guyana is in and around 100, and I did the math. I think about 150 is the current average salary for teachers in Guyana, and it can go all the way up to 401,000. That's the maximum cap, and it doesn't even have criteria on it. It just says special. All right, whatever that means. But the step down from that is, I think, 370 something thousand. So as far as your criteria goes, the highest you can get until you become special is 300. Let's call it 390,000. with that, bear in mind that the reason the average is so much lower than that is because obviously teachers reach a point where they can't sustain themselves anymore. So what you've had is this exodus, much like the nurses currently. By the way, just to throw a figure out there, we're not going to talk about it, but 21 nurses have resigned from public hospital in January alone. 21. Anyways, moving on from that. So you have this exodus of teachers doing the same thing as the nurses, leaving, going for greener pastures or in and around the world. But the salary for the starting teacher, which is what they're trying to negotiate, is only $91,000. All right. The government had stepped in and done some wishy-washy things and said, we're going to give you guys other benefits. Like we're going to not, basically we're just going to hand you $10,000 to buy school supplies, whatever that means. Every teacher in this country can tell you that they already have to buy supplies out of their own pockets. All right. So that money, that $10,000 that they're giving them has just given them back their $10,000 essentially. All right. So now I'd like you to tell me, first of all, what's your opinion on these teachers striking in this current situation as somebody close to, a family of teachers, in the past? And then more importantly now, how the third seat, sticking with our theme, third seat could have avoided or at least helped in this scenario.
Well, first of all, aren't we ashamed as a country? Aren't we embarrassed? I can't believe that that's how we treat our teachers, and I include the nurses and police, as you know I always do. So we talk about billion-dollar deals and billion-dollar contracts and hundreds of millions to build this and hundreds of millions to build that. We look around at all the new schools that have been built. Now, although that's a different conversation, if you go and look at Christchurch and you go and look at St. George's and you go and look at the new schools going up, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent. Somebody got a contract, somebody put up a construction project. When are we going to understand that our most important resource must be our people, and that of those important people, the teachers must have priority? So we present $1 trillion budget, as you say, 3 times what it was just a couple of years ago. And in that $1 trillion budget, we are starting our teachers out at $90,000. Because there's no kickback in paying a salary to a teacher. There's a kickback in awarding a contract. The 33rd seat in Parliament can reject a budget. And the 33rd seat in Parliament can insist that the government comes to talk to the opposition about how this money is going to be spent. There is no way in hell that we can justify $1 trillion budget and we are paying our teachers a starting rate of $90,000. So you don't need constitutional reform. What you need is oversight. And oversight is only possible if Parliament is independent, because Dr. Singh's budget is going to pass because they have 33 seats. It wouldn't pass if a third party had that 33rd seat. It wouldn't pass if that third party insisted, along with the opposition, come and talk to us about our teachers, about our police, about our nurses. Because that is the first critical step that we need to take to improve the lives of our people. Look, you can't continue doing this thing with cash handouts and this little bit of money and this freck there and this white envelope of money. What is it? School supplies and that kind of frivolous foolishness. There needs to be a systemic and manageable and transparent arrangement where you are getting this salary, you are paying this tax. If you got school feeding, if you got handouts for school children, it has to be done in a systematic way so that in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term, the quality of life of Guyanese citizens is improved. That's not happening. What we're getting is this because we care foolishness. Because we care is a political gimmick where government takes taxpayer money, puts it in envelopes, and with a nice picture to put in the newspaper, hands it to some supplicant. That should be done in a systemic way through NIS as part of a system. That can be done with the 33rd seat in Parliament. The arrangement for these payouts, the amount of salary paid to public servants and teachers can be managed with the 33rd seat in Parliament passing the law approving the budget. You don't need constitutional reform for it.
Excellent. All right. We have very, very quickly run out of time. All right. Believe it or not, an hour is gone already.
There's a lot more to discuss. I think we have to talk about the 33rd seat some more, Kian, at a future time, if you agree.
No, absolutely. We're absolutely going to keep pushing it now, especially with, we watching things unfold. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this straightforward. On my next show, I am going to be in length at the beginning of the show discussing the Madhya COI. All right, I think it's something that needs to be discussed in detail. And if you're available, I'm going to ask you to come because I know it's something that from your, we've discussed it previously, and I think it's a very important matter to this nation that that needs to be discussed. What was in that report and what has come from the situation and what needs to happen moving forward. All right. So on that note, everyone, I have to bring us to a close, unfortunately. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Jonas, again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Anytime. But on that note, guys, it's Friday evening. I want you all to be very, very safe out there. The road deaths have been increasing every single day. And it is disturbingly alarming. Okay, it can be any one of us, and you need to be careful out there. Be a defensive driver. Just because it's your right of way, don't speed through. Traffic lights, take your time and go through. Okay, guys, I can't stress this more. Too many close people. Everyone in this country has had somebody they've lost now. It is worse than anything we've ever experienced. So please, everyone, be very careful out there. On that note, please. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure you're here on our next show. My name is KIAN JABOUR. I am your host as usual for Apolitically Incorrect. Have a wonderful weekend. See you soon.
Great.